what's happening, guys? Welcome back to my next painting video, and this is the last of the Barbarian champion. This is the mountain champion, or the blue guy, essentially. This is probably the weirdest of poses. It's the most action pose, anyway, because he is mid-swing. It's always good. But I've gone a very light skin again, because I wanted to try out urban flesh on its own, because I haven't used it on its own yet, which is what we're using now to cover the flesh. Obviously, being the first colour, you don't have to be that careful, but it's nice. Don't smother the model, obviously. This has just been primed in a standard grey primer. I want to edge away from using coloured primers, but I can make sure I get all the colours that match without spending loads of money on army painter primers. Because this grey primer is half the price of the army painter one, and it goes on really nicely. And of course, it's an actual primer, unlike the Cobra ones that I've been using. So paint sticks to it like nothing. Amazing. I reckon with the Cobra paints, I probably would have had to do 2 coats of this, but the Elven Flesh is stuck pretty well. Then we move on to the blue for this model, which is Army Painter's Crystal Blue. I wanted something quite light, because I know I'm going to wash it with it later, so it's going to darken back up. But Crystal Blue is a really nice blue as well. That is probably one of my favourite blues that I've got. The blue. Once we move on to Werewolf Fur, it's a nice new paint that I've got I wanted to try out. It's actually a really nice brown, turns out. I find fur brown is very red. Like if you look at the other ones, the fur is very reddy coloured. It's like a fox sort of colour. This one is actually like more of a bear, which is why I'd like to achieve fur. That is clearly a bear pelt. Look at the size of it. It has to be bear. That's it for the fur. It was just the fur and the boots I used for that. Then I move on to Hemp Rope, another army painter paint I've got, a nice fresh one, which, as you can see in a minute, is probably too fresh. As I find with army painters, the slight problem when you first get them is they're not mixed properly in the bottle. But I start painting this and realise that is too thin. So I just go back, shake the bottle up again, give it a really good shake, and then just get a fresh batch out, and it covers so much nicer. What I've seen is a lot of people complain army painter paints are too thin, but it's not really. They're thin, they're just not mixed in the bowl properly, which give them a good shake and eventually they mix up. And it helps if you add a little barbarian inside the bowl. I think it's referred to as an agitator, which just helps the paint mix with the liquid in there. I'm just doing the base of the shoes, because it looks like it's got boots on, but they're wrapped in fur. So I've done the base of the boots in the leather colour, and then obviously the fur colour is fur. then that was all the leather parts I've got on this model. Then I'll move on to leather brown itself, which I'm only using on the inside of the cloak, as that's where leather comes from. It's the inside of skin. Okay? So I got the fur on the outside and the leather to contrast that. And of course, being ultra careful on this bit, as getting some on the werewolf fur is not so bad. Getting some on the elven flesh would cause a problem that would require me to be painting most of the model, which I really didn't want to do. Then we move on to oak brown, which is, I think, just this handle. The only thing I actually painted in oak brown. And even then, I'm not sure if it's oak. It could well be a metal handle. I had a big hammer, but an oak stick. But if I'd done it with metal, it would look too much. So the oak brown just breaks it up a little bit. Nice. But then we move on to desert yellow, which is I use for the hair. I wanted a blonde colour, but it's not the best colour to use for blonde, which I now know. But it turned out alright, and it stands out enough that you can tell it's hair, not just a leather like cap. And of course you got to get his beard in there. He's got a weird like sideways beard I found in this model. Like the beard doesn't go straight down like you would expect, it's sort of to the side, as if it's blown in the wind, which is a nice touch. Or something different from what you would normally see. That's it for the desert yellow. Then we're moving on to the metallics. Army painter's gunmetal. Just smothered the top of the hammer in there. There's no need to be really that careful. It's just around the oak brown. Got to be careful. And once the hammer's done, he's got a massive belt buckle. Like compared to the other one, this buckle is huge. But all the other champions had basic stuff. Guy's got a huge leather buckle. Oh, not leather, metal buckle. And of course, he's got studded armor. You got to sit there and dot in all the studs. That's it. And then we move on to the final base colour before the washes. Skeleton bone. He's got 2 skulls around his waist that you just got to paint in, and a few bones hanging across his waist. And of course, as with all champions, they've got the bone crown. I think I lose track of the camera here a little bit. And eventually I'm going to flip the model upside down and realise I'm not painting on the screen. Because you've got to try and get underneath the hand in order to get the paint onto the back of the crown. Yeah, I'm just sort of trying to do it now. It's not an easy thing to do. And in hindsight, I probably would have done the bone crown before doing the blue. But it still worked out right in the end. That's all that matters. And that's it for the base colours. And then we've got Army Painter's Strong Tone for the wash, which I've slowed down so that Sundew 23 can see how I use it. I've just squirted a nice couple of dollops on the palette and then dip my brush and paint. It goes on like a really thin down paint. Like, I don't thin my washes because there's no need really, unless you really don't want it to stain anything. As you can see, it's just dip your brush in it and smother the area you want shaded. There's nothing really fancy to it, and the results you get are really nice. Of course, you will, with washes, you can end the model after the wash and it will normally look fine, but it depends how much effort you want to put into making it look beyond fine, essentially. Because when I do this, it kind of merges the the leather brown and the werewolf fur together, and they sort of become one colour. Obviously, I go back after the wash is dried off and repaint the leather brown. Leave the werewolf fur how it is because it adds all that shadow. But I'm using strong tone on pretty much most of this model as well. Anything metallic is getting done, browns are getting done, all the hemp rope getting done. The only things I haven't done is the blue and the flesh, because I have actual tones for them. But there's nothing stopping you using the strong tone on the entire model and then just highlight it back up. That's what I do with my orcs, essentially. And then we speed the video back up just to finish off the strong tone, and before we move on to the blue wash, will be the next one, which I think shows another good example of how to put a wash on, because obviously this is zoomed out as well to show the palette that I'm using, which is just a random palette I've had for years in school. But one thing I would recommend is get a plate. Plates work great for palettes because they're easy to wash off and paint doesn't stick to them. And yeah, then we move on to blue tone, which literally you can see how much paint I'm putting on here. It's blobbing up everywhere. But I find I blob it up everywhere and then I don't refill from the palette, I just refill from the blobs. That keeps it in the recesses but doesn't take the whole thing away. And it adds that nice tone at the end. Of course, if you've got blobs on there and you haven't got more area to do, then just wipe it off with a brush. And then we move on to Army Painter's Flesh Wash, which exact same. Repaint the entire bit of elven flesh with the flesh wash, and of course the face. I got quite lucky with this flesh wash as well when I done the face, because it's covered the eyes really well, to the point where I didn't have to paint them because I think it looks just right how it is. Which of course you will see in the final photos, there'll be a relative close-up of the face. And that's it for the washes. They wait about 20 minutes for the washes to dry because they take a bit longer than normal paint. But as you can see here, I'm going back over the leather brown and you can see how much it's darkened it up, that wash. So just go back over it, leave the recesses, just do the raised areas, because then that's the whole point of the shade or the tone, whatever you want to call it. They're both the exact same. I think Citadel call them shades and Army Painter call them tones. My guess is that's some sort of copyright thing, but they're the same paint essentially. It's a wash, which is what Citadel used to call them. Now we're going back over skeleton bone just to bring the bone colour back up to how it should be. And you see there I made a slight mistake and got it on the blue. And I'll tell you how I corrected that after I tell you. I'm using gunmetal just to go over the edges and the big surface areas of the hammer. And of course the belt buckle I'll come to later on. Yeah, when I made the mistake with the skeleton bone on the blue, the best way to fix that is finish what you're painting first, the skeleton bone, and then bring the brush off, get a lot of water on your brush and just thin out the paint that's on the model. And eventually it gets to the point where it's just gone. Just keep wiping it off. And then we're on to the final part, which is painting the base black. As we always do. You black out the top of the base, and then because it's a game piece, if it wasn't a game piece, it was built for D&D, I'd black out the entire base. Of course, this is the blue team of the game, so I black out the base, and then I move on to crystal blue again and go around the outside of the base. And that's it. That is the finished model. It's one of the nicer ones. I'm not sure if you can see in the final pictures what the eyes look like, but I'll put some photos on Instagram anyway. Once now they're all done, I'll have a row of them. But that's it for this video, guys. So cheers for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.